My name is Fredrik Ögren. I'm 52 years old, born and raised in Sweden, but now I live on the lovely island of Malta. Racing was what brought me into the interest of cars itself. Listening on radio together with my mother when Formula One and Ronnie Peterson, the Swedish then famous Formula One driver, died in an accident. That affected my mother so much that I realized, first of all, it was scaring, but then you realize the excitement around the motorsports and the hazards and the deadliness. I think that was the intriguing part, the racing, the actual challenge to go fast. Father, he fixed cars, but my mother, she broke them. So we had an accident on the highway. That also was a little bit traumatizing, but you stuck to the topic that driving cars are fun, it's exciting, but also very, very scary if it goes wrong. This followed me my whole life, so racing was the interesting part. Turning 30, I realized I haven't done anything with my hands, so wouldn't it be cool to build a car? Because I still had the interest, but didn't do anything with it until then. Actually, I first picked up an old Mustang, 68 Mustang Fastback, original GT car. It was left abandoned in a silver mine. Fast forward 20 years later, that car was done and dusted. It was fun, but it wasn't that racing car. Do burnouts at the red light, that was wonderful with that car. And going on the highway until it was out of gas, because that happened quite often. That was fun, but it wasn't that intriguing, scary feeling about going fast and deadliness close by. So I said to myself, next project have to be a race car. It must be a race car. Started looking around and what I really liked was the 70s cars. Then what could I find? I wanted to have that racy look, that sleek nose, aggressive stance. And there was the Countach, you could go with the Ferrari. That was out of my league a little bit. And then I realized the Tommaso Pantera. That car came out in the same era as the other cars. It's built in Italy. It's a proper mid-engine Italian supercar. Coming from Sweden, I checked the Swedish De Tommaso Pantera forum, which is very dead. There's not much happening there, but all of a sudden one day a post came up that someone was selling. I called the guy up, and he lived in Thailand. So the story with this car really was that he bought it from a dealer in Sweden. The dealer called him. He bought a lot of cars and bikes. And one day his dealer called him and said, you know what, I got this strange car coming in and you should come down and see it. He went there, and there was the Tommaso Pantera sitting there. There was an orange car. He liked it. He bought it, drove it home, realized my wife gonna kill me when he sees I bought yet another car. And then one day, I think it was his oldest son that was going to graduate. He wanted to pick him up in that car from school. So he went there, picked up his son, floored it down the highway and shot the engine because there was loss of oil pressure. And then he just took it home, rolled it into the garden shed. He and his wife broke up. He moved to Thailand, left the car in there, and there it had been sitting for 20 years. So I went over there and looked in the shed. His son was there opening up, and yeah, there he was. Wrong year, wrong model, nothing was correct according to that small little advert. And it was totally rotten out. And I said, this is the perfect object. This is something I dare to, because whatever I do with it, it will be better off than it is right now. I bought it for what I think was quite cheap money back then. But then again, there wasn't really much of a car. I came down there with my father, pickup trailer, got it out, got it home to my garage, and then I realized, okay, how do I build this car? I don't really have the skills to do mechanical work. And I started calling around for different companies in Stockholm that could actually build a race car. And none of them ever even returned my call. Then I found one guy that I went to the garage. There was a sales guy there saying, you know, our mechanic is really good at doing things, but it takes a little bit of extra time with everything because he wants it perfect. So I called this guy. He goes under the nickname of Token. So Token came over and he looked at it and said, yeah, we could build something out of this. Picked it up 2 days before Christmas, snow outside in Sweden as it is, and brought it over to his garage, and there the journey began. We bought all the parts that we wanted for a Group 4 race car. The correct wheels, we had them made by BBS Historics divisions, proper size. So those were the proper stuff. And then one day the car was going into media blasting, and Token called me from the garage saying, Fredrik, you don't have a car anymore. There's nothing left. There's just dust and sand. And then that journey started taking a different path. But I still loved it because it was all about me and Token building this car together. He could build everything. That guy is amazing. He should actually be sitting here in his chair today because he built everything. He does engines, welding, everything. He knows everything. He's great. So we started looking at the front of it. How do we get the flow of all the lines? Something that looks correct, but then just, has a little bit of a better flow. We rolled it out of the garage for the first time and had it at the show in Stockholm, in Bornholm. And it stood next to correct Pantera as well. Orange, actually, like mine was in the beginning. But when they stood next to each other, it looks like two different cars, but they are actually the same. It's just that everything is a little bit tweaked, a little bit rounded off, a little bit lower, a little bit wider, everything's like that. So it was really fun seeing it next to each other. We started building the car, and of course, over the years, we started to have a dialogue about what if we did like this? What if we did like that? And, started changing things. But one thing that set the whole theme of it is actually the seats. When I was going to order the seats from Tillet in the UK, I was looking at what's the most I can add to everything. You want custom stitching, you want carbon fiber, you want colored back shell. It's like, yeah, I want that, but I also want the Pantera logo, so I got the logo sent it over. I wanted to select the color of the stitching, so I had them sending thread samples back and forth. The seats came out beautiful, and they had that blue color because I selected that just out of the blue. We kept the wheels because, as still said, the wheels are, even though they are those period correct racing wheels, they still have that. Building it like that, we started to get somewhere, but of course you needed an engine. And since I wanted a correct race car from the beginning, I searched the world, I would say, but the interwebs for a proper Cleveland 351 4-bolt block. And I found one eventually, and came out of a NASCAR. Apparently they build 300 blocks per season for NASCAR, and this one came out made in Australia. So I ended up buying that, shipped it all across the world, and of course shipping was more than the actual engine block cost because of the weight, so it became an expensive piece to put in the bookshelf eventually, because when it came there, it was like, okay, are we really going to put an old engine in this car that now is not typically correct? And with the correct transaxle, it would sort of be a waste of having those correct things in a car that is not 100% old and historic anymore. So we actually put them aside and we said, let's find something else. And then Token had at that point started getting more Pantera customers in his garage because word spreads around, and eventually he had 3 or 4 or eventually 5 cars, I think. Panteras pop up out of nowhere when you realize someone is helping fixing them. So one of his other customers had actually bought a Ford Racing modular, I think they are 1995 something, a 32 valve V8 that was actually sitting on a pallet. So they are full aluminum with made for overcharging. So looked like a great piece, and that guy found a Ford GT 2005 that had a front end collision. The whole rear clip was there with the driveline, and he bought that, put it in his Pantera. So that engine was just sitting there, and I said, I'll buy that of you. So we took that engine, paired it with a Audi R8 transaxle that I found because I wanted to still have the gated shifter. I could look at that direction now because I know that gated shifters, they tend to caught on to people. So I wanted to still have it as manual. So then we put it all together, built everything around it, and then Token again said to me, Fredrik, it doesn't look correct. It's not fully centered. It doesn't look beefy enough for what we're going to put in this. So we need to have another transaxle. All right. He called me in the middle of the night saying it doesn't look good. We have to fix it. And I said, well, as long as you can help me. No, I'll help you. It will be great. It will be great. We'll fix this. And then, of course, the second call was, you know what, to fix it, twin turbos on it. Shouldn't we have that? Yes, of course we should have. We should have mirrored twin precision turbos on this. And we can't just hide them in there. They need to hang out a little JDM style. Token will kill me for saying JDM though, because it doesn't want that theme in it. But it sort of gives a little bit of that Japanese style, perhaps, hanging out the turbos for show. But that's how that came to be. All of a sudden we had a different engine, turbos on it, transaxle had to go, and for some reason all of a sudden a transaxle, a brand new transaxle from a Ford GT showed up again on one of the websites in Sweden. Turns out that transaxle was actually used by the Swedish car builder Koenigsegg to see if they could fit it to their engine in the Gemera when they did the prototype. So they had it took it apart somewhat, scanned some parts, and then they sold it off because they ended up building their own. I thought it was fun because they also had this very exact engine in the previous cars. It was the Ford modular type engine, even though they made it extremely different. But it was fun because then we had an engine sort of the same. Transaxle came from the same type of guys, and we put them together, and that's what ended up in the car. Token being Token, he called me again. You know what, I have an idea, come over to the garage. And then when I came over, of course, there the car was sitting, and on top of it, the individual throttle bodies from, what are they called, Jeeves? So on top of the engine, he had placed them, and he said, I mean, you don't need to get them. I bought them just in case you want them. It's like, oh, okay, of course I need to have them. So we put that on top, and then he created all around the plenums. Everything is handcrafted, by the way, in aluminium, which is his favorite material. So it's always fun to see all these things being built around. There was, to actually cut to the end, there was never a plan. This car never had a plan. There was never a drawing. There was no decision about what we will do or what we will end up with. We just built it and called each other and changed ideas. Some came out horrible, some came out great, and then, you know, we just built it. Long journey, but it was a fun journey. And for me, it was never about completing the car, really. It was about the journey. Because during this time I moved from Sweden, I moved down to Malta. We made an agreement that he'll send me pictures of what he did during the week on Friday afternoons. So for me, Friday afternoons was the highlight of the week, because then I know that when the phone beeps, there will be pictures from Token on what he did this week. And it was wonderful. It was that evening porn switching through the phones like, ooh, look at that. And then, but it was a great moment. And I think that was also the great symbiosis with us building the car, that he had ideas and he sent some pictures. I changed some things, and then it came back, and then we did it like that. It worked out great in the end, I think. And the last part of this whole build was that we realized we won't probably never be finished with it, and I don't think we are finished, to be honest. Next week we will ship this back to Sweden and we will continue building on it. But before that, we said, you know, let's put the deadline. Sweden then this year, 24, there was this new car show in Båstad called the Aurora, and it was together actually with because Koenigsegg has their office down there and also their factory there. So they were part sponsor of this event, and it was going to be a high-end car show in Sweden for the very first time. And you had the possibility to also get in 300 cars from enthusiasts, and you had to apply early in the spring. And I did and got accepted. So then we had a deadline all of a sudden. It has to be ready. It has to come to this show. We can't pull out now. And that was a very hectic last couple of months in the garage. And I think I never called anyone so much in my life that period as I did with Token building the car. So in the last couple of months, that's where these pieces start coming together, when you start seeing it. And another piece is on the dashboard, because there were 3 or 4 versions that I know about, at least, of that dashboard that we scrapped over the years. He had to redo them every time, and eventually I wanted something that we have in the car like now, with more swooping lines, a little bit larger and so on. And the last piece was that I realized we changed everything. We removed the original dials and everything, and ended up with a dashboard. But that was to take it too far. As I said, we have to have a mechanical clock in the center dash. No matter what, you have to have that, because that's sort of the last piece of this car that will be mechanical inside. So that was also an item that were added, last couple of days, putting a hole in there and trying to figure out how to fit the clock in there. The clock though, which I ordered from Italy, and now living in Malta, you think it would be easy to get one, but we didn't. So it took ages to get a clock that ended up on Iceland in a storage facility, and I never got it. So I think that was the last bits and pieces that came together with the car. That was another thing. When we did it, of course, after a while you say, it looks good, but can we do it in carbon fiber? Yes, of course we can. And I think we did 4 or 5 versions of the door before we got them stiff enough or light enough. And of course, cutting down the original weights of the doors is 27 kilos. And these now weigh 1.4 kilos, fully dressed. So lots of weight saving with that. But we didn't want to show off all the carbon fiber because it looks wrong on the car. So everything is painted. Hood and on everything in the front is also carbon fiber, except for the fenders, which are hand-rolled steel. And of course the rear hood is also carbon fiber. Again, exposing it only in the middle to give a little bit of look and feel of that's the only piece where you see it. And inside of the doors you can see it, but otherwise we try to keep it away out of eyesight. A race car is nothing without some brutal racing slicks on them. I got them from Goodyear in Germany, who normally make sure that they get them to all the classic races happening in Europe. So they had all the dimensions of these cars and were happy to send them to me. Of course, then we wanted it to try it on the road, and doesn't work that well on cold roads in Sweden, but here in Malta it works brilliantly because then it's warm enough. The next step now is actually to try to get this back to Sweden again, into the garage of Token. He's actually referring to this as his little girl being on summer camp. When does she get home? And of course, what we tried to do now is to get it road legal in almost this condition. Because when this car was first ordered, it was sold to Germany. I got the original paperwork of it. The color was gray. So it was gray from the beginning, sold to Germany. For some reason, it ended up in the US. So someone sold it to the US. I have a dealer sticker that was on the trunk of it, but I have no paperwork in the US. I contacted the Ford registry there, or Martin registry, because they normally track the Panteras as Fords, because the dealership also saw them as Ford models. But they say there's no record of this car in the US. But then when it got to Sweden, it was imported as personal belongings it's registered as a belonging, not the car. So it doesn't have any restrictions of volumes of, engine, or it doesn't have dimensions of wheelbase or anything. The papers are quite clean, but it is registered and it is road legal. Meaning that if you now go back with it, do some changes for security measures and indicators and some other stuff that you need to have, you should be able to put it on the road like this. So that's the next adventure for this car. And then there's a story about the scoop coming up on the hood back there. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. It came out like something I'm pretty happy with it. It has the presence. It has this stance. The blue color, you either love it or hate it, but I love it because it pops so much. Let's bring it back home and continue the journey, I would say. Why did it end up in Malta, and why does it have the Maltese classic car badge on the back of it? I'm going to be truly honest. I lived here now for more than 3 years, and I never had much contact with people outside of my work limits. You tend to end up with friends and colleagues for the people you work with, but I didn't manage really to get any real friends outside of that. And I was always like, yeah, but the car scene, if you know someone there, you can actually start talking to people. But I never had the time. And then I went to the Medina Grand Prix a couple of times, even before pre-COVID. And now it was coming up again, and I had my car almost ready, and it's like, damn it, I want to be there, if not just for shits and giggles and show the car. I can't drive it, but I could show it. And then there was this year, well, actually it was last year as well, I guess, the Style and Elegance show were coming up the day before, and I said, at least I can get it to that. And then I tried to start booking some transportation. And through that, all of a sudden, someone called someone and my phone lit up, and all of a sudden I had a lot of unknown numbers with lovely people that just wanted to, get the car here, we'll help you with this, we'll sort this out. And Anthony being one of them, helping out with both the garage and transportation and a lot, and the owner, the other guy, also helping out a lot, and all the lovely people involved in this just helped out. And I think that's also, you see the love of people that wants to help out because the love of cars. And all of a sudden it got here, and we transported it from Sweden to Genova, and there from the ferry on down here. I got a number from Anthony again, call this guy, he has a flatbed truck, he can pick it up. And I called that guy, and he's like, I'm already picking up your car, I'm here in Lucca in the distribution center picking up your car. How did that even happen, So I feel a bit spoiled, but it was super fun. And then getting it here and all the hospitality from all the lovely people around the show. And then I also said, I really would like to have a Maltese badge on it, because all the adventure of getting it here, of course it should have that badge on it. And it's not coming off, it's staying there.